there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Meaghan.
And I'm Shirin.
And we are kicking off what will be, a couple of episodes about Greek mythology? Whether we like it or not, we're here. It's July, and the Odyssey comes out this Friday.
You know what? As much as I try to get away from Greek mythology, it just keeps coming back and finding me. And I'm like, oh, God, I guess we have to talk about this again.
Yes. Over and over and over again, which is literally the subject of our little chat that we're going to have today. I think we're going to keep it high level and kind of simple. This is more just sort of an opinion to a degree, I suppose.
Yeah.
But Shirin, in I think the spirit of this massive adaptation coming out this week, had the idea for us to take a look at, God, we keep having these retellings of stories like the Odyssey, or just, of much older mythology, particularly Greek mythology. These are things that we see over and over and over again. And eventually we're kind of like, oh, why is that? Just out of curiosity.
Why do we keep going back to these? And I think the Odyssey is 3,000 years old. And so
yes,
I just got thinking about it. I was looking at all the press tours and I was really enjoying all the dresses, and all just the beautiful things and stuff. And I just kind of got to thinking, I'm like, it's so interesting to me that Christopher Nolan decided to make an adaptation of the Odyssey. Yeah. I didn't really read much on it or his rationale or whatever, but Christopher Nolan, you kind of associate him with Batman, and then Oppenheimer.
More recently, yes.
More recently,
sure.
And then I kind of stopped and was like, the Odyssey, it's an interesting choice. And in 2026, so I was like, Meaghan, I think we should talk about this for just a minute here.
Yes. And I do agree with you. I think that's a great point, that it's very different from his other films in the sense that many of them have a much more sort of sci-fi element to them. Obviously, you have a comic book thing with something like The Dark Knight or just the Batman trilogy in general, but Oppenheimer obviously focused very heavily on the science community and everything that was going on during the Cold War. But then obviously other films of his, like Interstellar, is a huge one that comes to mind. Tenet, it has a big time travel something component. Oh, I haven't seen it. Don't get mad at me.
I saw it, but it was don't ask me what happened.
That's it. So a lot of those types of things. I would argue this is one of those where every once in a while he kind of goes off on a tangent. So he directed Dunkirk, which came out in 2017. That is obviously a war epic and is something that's very different, again, than a lot of the other stuff.
Dunkirk.
Yes.
Who's John Kirk? I'm like, who? And then I'm thinking of Captain Kirk. I'm
my pronunciation that bad. You're like, but that's Star Trek, Meaghan.
I'm like, that's still Star Trek. That's still sci-fi. I'm like, I didn't realize he made a Star Trek adaptation. When did that happen?
When did that happen? Yeah, what a good question. Put it on your list, Mr. Nolan. Anyway.
Sorry, Dunkirk. Yes, that was a historical.
Correct.
And
that one's based. But that one's much more based in reality, obviously, because this is something that actually took place. Whereas I think sometimes, and I would argue that some of the discourse online about how up in arms a lot of people are about this adaptation of the Odyssey, I think some people maybe forget that the Odyssey is a work of fiction. And it's not actually based on
because there's gods and monsters in the Odyssey. Do people not know that? That's
okay. It's not that. It's just there's a particular portion of people out there who are making a really big deal, particularly out of certain aspects of the casting, which that's something that I do have some feelings about, but I want to watch the film first and then see if I still have the thought in my head that I'm having prior to going in to see it. So that's going to be something that we have to revisit after we see it in the next few days.
Yes.
But on the other side of things, there's a racism component in there. I'm sorry. I've never seen people so angry about a casting of Helen of Troy in my fucking life. And I think that there's a big racial component to that. And that's just people being icky a lot of the time. I don't care what the description in the story is. It is a work of fiction. So
it's 3,000 years old.
Correct. Anyway, I did. Yeah. Anyway, so I still don't think that Helen of Troy feasibly would have been blonde haired and blue eyed like she was in the Troy film, in spite of what everybody seems to think.
Yeah.
And if people can have their own tastes, but if you don't think that Lupita Nyong'o is a beautiful woman, you have some problems. So
yeah, I'm just too tired
yeah,
with racism that I don't even feel like getting on this soapbox anymore. Like it's just ridiculous.
no, we're not going to talk about it too much. We'll talk about it more after we actually watch the film. However, before we get into our little discussion today, Shirin, shall we do a what's on our nightstand? Because you have not done one in an age while you were away. I did one with Arthur, and I was also like, damn, we haven't done this in a minute.
I know. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, okay, we like focus so much on these adaptations these days that we're like forgetting our nightstands.
Whoops.
Which kind of is fine for me right now because I'm in one of my reading slumps, but
It
also
happens.
not. I tend to be slumpier than Megan is with my reading. I can't remember. Did I do a what's on your nightstand for Dungeon Crawler Carl?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I am reading Dungeon Crawler Carl. I can hear my husband and my friend Tim screaming at me, who are being like, you are like taking forever to read this goddamn book. I know you've read it, and I know that the world has exploded about it. So for anybody who has not read Dungeon Crawler Carl, or heard about it, which have you been living under a rock recently?
I mean, if you're listening to like a book podcast, I very much assume that you at the very least know what it is.
Yeah. It's by Matt Dinneman.
Yeah.
And I believe the first book was published in 2020. It has exploded. There's like 7 books in the series, 8 books in the series now.
Is it the 8th one that was just released this year?
So.
I think so.
And they just announced that there's going to be a TV adaptation on Peacock and produced by Seth MacFarlane. And I'm like, I can't think of anybody better to produce this, honestly.
Yeah, I guess it's madcap enough that you're kind of like, okay, I can see the vibe to a degree.
So basically it's the story of Carl, who is just kind of minding his own business. One day he finds out his girlfriend's cheating on him while he's looking after her cat, Princess Donut.
The Queen Anne Chunk.
Yes.
She has the whole name.
She has all the names. And he like dumps his girlfriend via text and just goes back to minding his own business. He loves this cat, even though he won't admit it.
I know.
And then the cat jumps out a window and he is forced to like leave his apartment at like 2 a.m. to go chase this cat. But he puts his girlfriend's like pink Crocs on, I think, and he's got no pants on. Because he's like,
it's like 2:30 in the morning.
2:30 in the morning, and Donut runs out the door, and so he's like, "Oh, damn it, Donut!
God damn it, Donut!
God damn it, Donut!" And so he goes out, and after he goes out, aliens zap the earth and pull all buildings into thin air, basically, because Earth did not pay this like amount of money that like every like planet is supposed to pay to the intergalactic species or something. And they basically say anybody who's left living is anybody who wasn't in a building. And all these like portals open up into a dungeon, and it creates like, so basically people have the option of either going into the dungeon and fighting for their lives in like a very D&D style, like
it's
video game.
Yeah.
Very video game style.
It's like a video game come to life that is broadcast across the galaxy for entertainment purposes.
It's kind of like the Hunger Games-ish, but like
way crazier.
Way crazier, like nuts.
And way more fun, because come on.
It's so fun. And like the characters are so funny. So it's a very good time if you like D&D, if you like video games, if you like especially if you like video games. Like I feel like I'm reading this and I'm playing a video game as I'm reading it. So my husband has breezed through all like 7 books.
Oh my God.
And like he's on book 7.
Shut up.
And like my friend Tim is also on book 7.
Mm-hmm.
And so the two of them are just like jamming out about like what's going on, and like they are incessant with like, are you done the first book yet? And I'm like, no, I'm having an existential crisis as I normally do. So
Shut up and leave me alone about
shut up
it.
and leave me alone. Book reading is like slow right now. Okay, so that's it.
Nice. Love
What about
that.
you?
I am reading an ARC that we were generously sent, which is being published right at the beginning of August, August 4th, called The Iron Hex by Victoria S. Walsh, who is a Canadian author. She became pretty well known in the sort of social media community for doing a lot of like body positivity stuff. She's stunning. She's got great style. She always looks like a princess, and I love that. I think she's fabulous. And this is her debut novel that is being published in the next few weeks. It's definitely like a fantasy romantasy, but it has a lovely sort of coziness to it, I find. So it's kind of all of those fun things sort of wrapped up into one, which is really nice. I'm up like over halfway through it at this point, and it follows a potions witch named Ira Eckhart, who runs a small shop in a particular area of her kingdom. She's able to get away with what she does. So magic has been outlawed, of course, and all the witches have been hunted down and killed because there was an uprising against the nobility a few years prior. And she has been living in this small village with her pet rabbit, who's like her familiar. And she runs this potion shop, and her stuff is a little bit more tangible. It's not just like I'm just performing magic out of nowhere. So she's allowed to do what she does essentially, until one particular evening, a man who is formerly of the military that was part of this uprising and, you know, part of the people who murdered a whole bunch of these witches a while back, shows up and is basically like, hey, remember me? And she's like, no, because it turns out that a few years ago, part of her memory simply disappeared, and she does not know why or remember what happened to get her to that point. In her mind, she always lived in this village and she was always just a potions witch, but he's quickly like, hey, we know each other, and what the fuck, why don't you remember any of this? And so the two of them together basically take off on a journey, partially because they're being chased by the military and partially because they need to find and track down a person. I'm not going to spoil anything, but they need to track down somebody extremely important to the kingdom in order to see if there is a way to restore order to things and peace. And so they go off on this kind of like epic journey, but it's just the combination of like the style of writing, the sort of sweetness of kind of the developing of feelings between the two characters, well, developing for her because she doesn't remember. He definitely already had them. So there's a lot of like he fell first type of like vibes to it, but it does have a level of coziness, partially maybe because of like the style of writing or the magical style, or maybe like kind of the world that Victoria's created. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's just like it's got like a lovely sort of sentiment to it, and I'm into the story because it's really picked up now, and we're kind of like we've learned a lot more. Like she doesn't make us wait an entire book before she explains part of what's going on, so I really appreciate that because I didn't have to be like, oh Jesus Christ, like what is this all the way until the end of the novel, and then you know you like left on a cliffhanger and you're like, oh, for crying out loud. And I'm sure that there will be one because I believe this is the beginning of a trilogy.
Okay.
But at the same time, I'm happy to have at least been given like an amount of context about what's going on. But I'm really enjoying it so far. And it does have, you know, it's lovely. It does have certain sentiments in it. Like it does have a curvier, I will say, lead character. And it's not pointed out and thrown in your face every 10 seconds. She just exists in that space.
Oh, well, that's good.
And that's it. And it's just nice.
I have to admit, when you were saying like part of her memory disappeared, she didn't remember him, I was thinking of Gabriel's Inferno. I'm like,
no, not that
I'm
shit.
like, was it cocaine?
Absolutely not, because it's too cute for that. Also by a Canadian author, man. Those are a trip, guys. If you ever want like some insanity, watch the movies, read the books, do whatever you want.
Listen to our podcast episodes where we just yell into the void for hours about Gabriel's Inferno.
Someone has to do it. I think Tosca Musk has a lot to answer for.
With those, but we really gave up, didn't we?
Oh Christ! I think we got through 6 of them, didn't we? And then we were just like, never mind.
That many? Oh,
they all become one at some point. So.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know how many there actually are.
I think there's supposed to be 12.
Yeah, but I don't think they got to that point. I think they
Oh,
stopped.
you're gonna have
So
to check your Passionflix account.
I've canceled it.
Oh, finally. I'm like, why are you
Your
still
girl
paying
needs
for
to
this?
no, your girl needs to save money. She's shopping for a house. She needs to stop. So I've canceled.
I was gonna say, I'm like, girl, the Blood Dagger Brotherhood is not worth it.
Absolutely not. So anyway,
Anyway,
gosh, we've been prattling, haven't we?
we
Sorry.
have. Sorry.
So let's chat a little bit about some feelings about things. Do you want to maybe kick things off?
Sure.
And I guess for people who are just kind of like everybody, a lot of people have heard of, Homer's The Odyssey and the Iliad and things and these very epic old poems. They're basically epic poems
They
essentially
are epic
from
poems, yeah.
yeah, from several thousand years ago. Do you want to give people a little bit of a rundown of maybe what the base source material is? I know we could do 4 episodes just talking about the story, but we're not going to do that.
So basically, like, and forgive me if I, as Megan just said, I'm gonna glaze over some details here.
Neither of us were classics majors, so I apologize.
Not a classics major. I
No.
have had the misfortune of studying this twice now. But my brain doesn't like absorb these types of stories super well because I find that they get a little repetitive because the themes are very similar through it. Anyway, so it's an ancient Greek epic poem, like Megan said, that follows the hero Odysseus. At the end of the Trojan War. So he's been fighting in Troy for 10 years during this war. So many of you may have seen Troy. You may have, heard of the story of Helen of Troy and, the Trojan horse and all that. So it's the end of the Trojan War. And so, so Odysseus embarks on the journey to return home to Ithaca. And his wife,
king, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That is correct. And his wife Penelope has remained loyal to him. So nobody had cell phones back in the day. And so Penelope
Thank you for that.
I'm just saying Penelope like hanging out, being like, I don't know if he's dead or not. Like it's been 10 years since this war started, basically. And then he embarks on this journey, and it's an epic poem. It's an epic journey that you would kind of see a lot in a lot of English literature, where he and his crew get on a ship and they look to return home, but then just a whole plethora of garbage ensues. They end up kind of facing all sorts of things. And basically what happened is he pissed off the sea god Poseidon. And so Poseidon's like, fuck you, Odysseus. So it takes him another 10 years to get home to Ithaca, to Penelope. And so meanwhile, in Ithaca, like all these suitors are like coming up to Penelope all the time, wanting to marry her. And because she's like the queen, she's like desirable. He has a son, Telemachus. And so he's had this son with Penelope, and so at this point, she's raising their son. All these suitors are coming to her. She's like kind of acting like a widow or whatnot, but she doesn't know if he's alive or dead.
Right.
And then on Odysseus's side, he's kind of facing everything you can imagine is coming his way. Gods, monsters. He meets a cyclops. He meets the enchantress Circe. He goes through the deadly sirens, and like he manages, like through his own like cunning, and he's quite intelligent and he's a very good leader. He manages mostly to get his crew through until the end, but unfortunately he's the last man standing. They all die in the end.
Right.
And so when he finally gets home, to Ithaca. I think it's the goddess Athena. So you see a lot of gods and goddesses. So you see like Zeus, Poseidon, Athena. I think there's a few of them as well. Anyway, so Athena helps him disguise himself. This is where I get a little pissy with these stories, because there's always a fucking element of the dude disguising himself.
It's true.
This happened in Troilus and Crusade. This happened, which is Tristan and Isolde, if you guys are familiar with that one. This happens in, I think it happens in the Iliad as well. Like it happens in a lot of these. So she helps him disguise himself as a beggar. And there's this whole like thing going on with Penelope and her potential suitors, where they've set up this like obstacle course. But it's not really, it's like whoever can like string up this bow and like and it's Odysseus's bow,
Correct.
and they have to like string up his bow, and they have to like fire an arrow through 12. I can't remember what they are, 12 something or others. And whoever can do it can like marry Penelope. And of course, you know, Odysseus is like disguised as a beggar, and he like comes in and he's like, I'm poor, I'm gonna do it. And everybody's like, ha ha ha, she's gonna marry this beggar. And so he does the thing, and then he's like, ha ha, it is I. And like, but
Like a
meanwhile,
magician.
like a magician, but like meanwhile, because he's been kind of doing all like trying to regain her trust, or trying to think about how he's going to get back in her good books after being away from her for 20 years. He actually gets reunited with his son, and they like form a bond again and stuff. Anyway, so like once he shows himself and says, "'Tis I,"
Yes.
everybody's happy, and he restores peace to his kingdom. So
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of themes in this that are kind of like the main reasons why this is so popular, I would say. And we can get into that if you want, but that's kind of like your rundown of what the Odyssey is about. So when Meaghan was saying that, you know, Christopher Nolan typically does like, you know, like sci-fi and stuff, I'm like, you know, you're not totally off with this. Not that it's sci-fi,
okay, I suppose that you could call it speculative fiction or something, and then you could shoehorn it in there. But to me, it reads a little bit more like epic fantasy of some sort, just because of the style of story that it is to a degree. So yes, this is something that is, like we mentioned, a little bit out of the wheelhouse, but this, I mean, you know, at base level, yeah, we just went through things at a really, really high level in terms of what the story is and what the plot is of the Odyssey. But it's kind of, even just from describing it, it's easy to see why it's a really enduring story. There's so much that happens, and it's exciting. And there's so many, like, you know, different types of characters that are introduced. And it's about someone like persevering after they've been ripped away from their life and everything like that. And it's about the hero being able to, you know, make it through to the end and overcome every obstacle, because arguably his journey home is a million times worse than the war he was just in for a decade.
Yeah. And it's like, it's also like things like demonstrating intelligence, you know, and like how intelligence can be more valuable than brute strength, you know, and this is like a warrior and a king, you know, and like, but he relies more on his intelligence. It's all about like loyalty, like Penelope is loyal to a fault. And like, you know, it's a lot about home and family and like, you know, and then of course, you know, you've got like all your gods and monsters in there that add an additional layer of excitement to your point, that have infiltrated so many other adaptations.
It's crazy. Between that's it, just most of them have their own stories in the first place that were passed around for ages. And, you know, many of them have wound up with their own retellings and things like that. And I would say that that's something that within this more modern space and the more modern sort of time within literature that we live in right now, I think a lot of the reason that we are still seeing such heavy popularity in how many of these retellings and more modern versions of these stories are being published is really because it gives readers the opportunity and authors the opportunity to examine things from a different lens. Because very many times in many of these older texts, you know, things are fairly black and white in terms of who is good, who is bad, and who has good motivations and who has bad motivations. And so allowing people the opportunity to explore these things through a more modern lens, whether it be through specific characters or a style of the story, whatever the case may be, it really just allows people to be able to see a different version of this tale, perhaps from a character that is more marginalized within the original story. Particularly, we know that it's extremely popular to see more feminist retellings of a lot of these stories, you know, taking the characters that are very often just the witch or the seer or the one who's kind of off to the side and making her the protagonist, making her the main character of one of these stories, you know, like Madeline Miller's adaptation, like, version of like Circe and things like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, some of the most popular ones are what I'm thinking of, things like that are giving voice to, and the spotlight really, to a character that is very often just considered one thing, just considered evil, or just considered to be like an off to the side sort of tertiary character that doesn't necessarily get a ton of focus.
What I always found interesting with this one, and I remember now reading it, was that Odysseus was not portrayed as like purely good, because like
Yeah.
he first of all these problems start because he pisses off Poseidon.
Correct. Yes.
And like I remember reading it and being like, your crew is dying, like you're not like the greatest person on the planet here.
Yeah.
Like he's not like a hero basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see how they portray him in the movie, in the upcoming adaptation, because to your point, like there's a lot of gray areas with this character and with this story.
Mm-hmm.
And the point of it is that he's not meant to be like a hero. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
meant to be more focused on the themes of the story, and what happens when you make certain choices,
Yeah.
and then this is kind of the consequence that you have to face.
Mm-hmm.
And then how you have to overcome the hardships of your consequences, essentially, and like come out on top. So I am curious to see this adaptation, and I do also want to say that I'm going into this looking at it as an adaptation, as an interpretation of the
Mm-hmm.
story, because again, like we just listed all the gods and monsters. I don't know how many gods and monsters are going to be portrayed in this movie, or if they're going to keep it more kind of like, I don't know, from the trailers that I've seen, it's got more of like a gladiator vibe to it,
Yeah, it definitely does have something. I don't know. I feel like even though there are screenings and things happening like as we speak, to even look through IMDb, there are a ton of people listed, but they don't necessarily have character names. And so like we're not 100% sure of some of these people playing some of these gods. I do have confirmation of a few
Yeah.
people within the space, like Zendaya, for instance. Obviously, she does make an appearance and she is credited as Athena. So we're seeing, some things here and there. Charlize Theron is credited as Calypso. So, like, we are seeing certain aspects of things. However, I agree with you in the sense that I don't know, are we seeing Zeus? Who's going to portray Zeus? Who will portray Poseidon? Yeah, that's it. Who will kind of do these things? I do not know, because right now a lot of what we seem to have confirmed are the people who are playing like the human, quote unquote, characters to an extent, right? Like we know that like Matt Damon is Odysseus and Anne Hathaway is Penelope and Tom Holland is Telemachus. Yes, and Robert Pattinson is Antinous, who I believe is one of the shitty suitors that is after Penelope for a period of time, or something to that degree. And Lupita Nyong'o, like I mentioned earlier, plays Helen of Troy, although she's double casted as Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra.
That makes sense.
So I was like, oh,
because I think he has like a hallucination about her.
I think you might be right. Yep.
On his journey.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what anyway. But that would make sense to me. So
yeah.
But yeah, like I say, this is going to be an interesting interpretation. And as I mentioned a moment ago, there have been many of them up until now. So some that you may not even realize were an adaptation interpretation of the Odyssey.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, brother, where art thou?
I don't know if we talked about that, because we have talked about the film in a previous episode, and I think we might have brought it up in passing, but yes, and it's arguably one of the more famous film adaptations and modernizations of this story as well.
That's right. There's also what was the one I just told you about? Cold Mountain.
Oh, Cold Mountain. Yeah, that's it. Which that is surprising to me. I mean, granted, I have not watched that movie in a very long time, to the degree that I forgot it was based on a book. But yes, apparently the book of Cold Mountain, which was published, 1977, 78, something like that, bore a lot of similarities, and I think took inspiration from the Odyssey. So that's interesting.
And there's even been very famous books. So many famous books are also based on the Odyssey. Ulysses by James Joyce.
Oh, of course, yes, because Ulysses is how he's referred to in some versions. I think it's the Latin something
Yes.
something version of it.
Well,
Odysseus is
in
Ulysses.
French, it's Ulysse.
Oh, correct. Yes.
Yeah. So that's his name, I believe, because I
Yeah.
studied this in French. So yeah, it's the Odyssey, and Odysseus is Ulysse in French. So Ulysses by James Joyce is kind of it's like an application of the story
Yes.
to and like kind of an Irish reality or whatnot.
Yes. And that's also an extremely famous work of fiction as well.
It is. Yeah, it's like a single day in Dublin or something. I have never read Ulysses. That thing scares me. It is so big, and I've heard that it's like it is a trip. So yeah, I kind of walk away from it. But yeah, there's like science fiction. There's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, right. And you know what? It's true that we don't think about it actively, but every time like the Odyssey or there's an Odyssey in like a title or it references a character from the original work, like whatever the case may be, it's true that we don't think about it, but very often it's at the very base level inspired by, if not, it is some sort of a retelling of.
And Percy Jackson and the Olympians.
Of course.
Or the Sea of Monsters, or whichever one
it
it
is. Lightning Thief. I think Lightning Thief is the first one.
Yeah.
Sea of Monsters is either 2 or 3. I cannot remember. Anyway, yes, there are multiple books. Yes.
I mean, it's not like fully based on the Odyssey, but there's many creatures and situations that are pulled from it. So I think like Christopher Nolan really like took on quite something with this one, because like there's going to be so many opinions, as you've alluded to, they're already existing online. So yeah,
some of what I'm seeing, I can't help but kind of gravitate towards, which I understand, which is, so far having seen just trailers really more than anything else. I will admit that watching Tom Holland with a very, very American accent be like, my dad is coming home, is very, very bizarre to see in like an epic Greek poem format. I would have thought that not necessarily that accents would be involved, but that perhaps the language would be more formal or something to that degree. I'm very curious to see how this actually plays on screen.
It's an interpretation, Meaghan. It's an interpretation.
Except that it's period set is part of the problem.
Yeah, I think that's what
makes it bad. When you modernize things, it's much easier for me to suspend that. I think this might have been part of my problem with Wuthering Heights, is that like when you take me out of the exact setting of what the novel is or what the original work of literature is, it's kind of easier for me to be like, sure, fine, we're doing something different with it, whatever, cool. But when you put me in the exact period, especially something like this looks like it's going just as epic, and that the visuals and the costumes and everything will be much closer, not accurate probably, but like, much closer to representing that time period. I think it'll be interesting to see how I feel about it coming out of it. So
yeah, I'm like, now that we've done this episode and I did kind of a bit of dusting off of my brain on what this story is about, and I've kind of thought about it a bit, I am looking forward to seeing the movie. And although you mentioned at the beginning of the call that you have thoughts about, is that what you were on about the language piece?
Yes. Yeah. There was a weird component of that, which I started noticing as I saw the trailer more frequently. I was like, yeah, this is a bit strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to not watch any of the trailers. You know me, I like to go into things blind. So
True.
I'm just kind of, I'm gonna go in, see what's what. And but I remember when they cast the cast, I was like, those are choices. But
I think, I'm curious to see how we feel about the like language used of it all by the end of it. Yeah. And I'm also curious to see how, and I don't know how immersed I feel into the actual film itself, where at some point these types of like massive projects stop being like, oh, look, it's like, this is the story, these are the characters, and they start being a spot the celebrity playing this character. Sometimes
Yeah,
these really stacked casts are really difficult to immerse yourself into that way
in the
because you're like, oh,
story.
that's blah, blah. That's this person. That's that person.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very good point to make as well, because when you have a stacked cast on like an original script, it's different, right? Like
Yes.
they're bringing the character to life. They're
Yes.
showing it the first time, and you're kind of like, okay, like yeah, that's Robert Pattinson playing this character,
Sure.
and I've never seen this character before, so I don't have any preconceived notions of what this person should be or whatnot.
Exactly.
But you are right, like there's all this like, oh, Anne Hathaway played Catwoman. Oh, Anne Hathaway was the chick in Interstellar who was talking about love transcending all the universes
Yeah,
that
that's
made me
it.
burst out laughing in the movie theater. No shade to Anne Hathaway, she's fantastic, but
I
like
love
that
her.
line was like, what? Um, so yeah, she's been in a lot of Christopher Nolan movies.
She
So
has. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if we can take ourselves out of the Hollywood of it all and go back to ancient Greece, basically.
Pretty much. Yeah. I don't know. So we will be reporting back about that probably before like early next week
Yeah.
and be kind of going through all of this. Maybe Arthur will hop on with us too. I don't know. I need multiple opinions about this. I get the feeling.
Ew, Arthur, boo. He's stinky. Oh, who said that?
Oh God, where'd that come
Where'd
from?
that come from?
Definitely not Shireen. Anyway, we'll hop back on, and I think that we'll just have a clearer picture at that point about how we actually felt about it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, in the meantime, obviously, you can check out our socials. We're at Fully Booked CA everywhere, and we'll be posting, obviously, when the episode goes live, of course, for the review as well. You can follow us over on the website at fullybookedca. We have reviews, we have recommendations, we've got lists, we've got all sorts of things for new and upcoming releases. So you can check all of that out over there. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.